Ooh. Hey, this is Arun. Just wanted to start off this session by making a clarification. Today is actually the 32nd day that we've been in quarantine here in Santa Clara County. Well, actually, in the Bay Area. And the first day of the quarantine was actually on St. Patrick's Day, the 17th of March, and it is now the 18th of April. So we're on day 32. I wanted to go ahead and continue what I was introducing yesterday by basically just talking about random things. And actually, today's video is dedicated to my cousin Nick Foreman, who suggested that I talk about Street Fighter 2. So we'll get into the history. And Street Fighter 2 was actually released originally in 1991. This is the second one, and this is after the original Street Fighter, which was actually released in 1987. I do probably have like some kind of Street Fighter or something slideshow that I can actually talk to you guys about, but I figured I'd just like basically make it simple. So basically, the latest version of Street Fighter is Street Fighter 5, and what's awesome about this is that there is actually an arcade mode which allows you to play like any of these versions in the Street Fighter 5 format. So let's go to Street Fighter 2. I'm just gonna show you, but basically, originally when it was released, there were 8 characters, and I remember one of the biggest deals was that it introduced one of its first selectable female characters of the game. And most of you that have known me, that Chun-Li has actually been near and dear to my heart. So I actually cosplayed as her as well. I've been to a couple of events and did a cosplay. I'll go ahead and I'll also post that as well. But yeah, it's Street Fighter 2 has been near and dear to my heart ever since I was a kid. We used to go to our local liquor store. It was called the Stop and Buy near my parents' house, and they had arcade cabinets there. So this is back in the day when arcade games actually used to cost $0.25. And the way that it worked is that you would get to be able to play as any of 8 characters. These are the original 8 right here, and eventually different versions of Street Fighter came out. There was Championship Edition, there was Hyper Edition, and then they released Super and then Super Turbo. And so these were all from Street Fighter 2, and then they added some more characters, including the bosses were the 4 bosses were playable, and also they introduced 4 new characters as well. So basically it just kept adding more characters and adding more different versions. They balanced them a little bit better, and so that's basically it's the history of Street Fighter. Street Fighter 3 came out, then 4 and 5. I actually one of my favorite versions was actually Street Fighter 4, and that's when they actually introduced kind of like that 3D element. It's still on a 2D playing field, but yeah, I remember going to the Stop and Buy, and basically it used to be $0.25 to play, and what you would do is to save your place, you would put $0.25 on the arcade cabinet, and then whoever lost would have to basically let the next person in line go. It was really weird that people used to queue up to play. Nobody was really police other than ourselves. So luckily, it's not like we've ever had an encounter where somebody's like, oh no, it was my turn. Some people would, and then usually people are like, oh man, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. But I don't know if any of you remember those, but they actually started putting these little strips, that little quarter holders, and then they would put a number next to it so that way you would know whose turn it was. But it was really self-policed, and that's basically how we were raised. I remember kind of growing up, well, especially if you want to go down that path, growing up gay, and it wasn't necessarily that I wanted to be Chun-Li. And it's funny that I ended up cosplaying as her. It's just that I actually kind of liked the play style that she had. I was a little bit of a button masher when I first started, so I liked pushing the buttons really fast, and I found out that that's basically how you do her little lightning kick. Um, and I actually did main more characters, but some people would always remember me as the guy that always picked the girl. Um, so my brother Tony and I used to actually play once it was released in for Super Nintendo in 1991. Tony and I would play for hours and hours, basically playing Ryu versus Ken, and I got used to doing the quarter circle motion in order for you to throw fireballs, and that's basically how I got my training. I actually even studied, like, little pictures to figure out where all the hitboxes are. And really what it is Street Fighter is, it's kind of like a complicated game of rock, paper, scissors. And what would happen is, if one person throws one move and another person throws another, one of them would counter the other. Just kind of similar to how like real life fighting is. And so this was it was basically kind of like a nerd's way of fighting, and it gave me a basis for basically like who I am as a gamer today. I I went as far as to even meet other people in my life who were also gamers. I actually was kind of seeing somebody who had built me my own arcade stick. If you can imagine, to a gamer, that's like kind of like giving them jewelry. So, but full-size arcade stick, even had parts imported from Japan. So these were, really like, it was really a big deal. I still have the joystick. I actually, maybe I'll take some pictures and I'll post them online or something. But yeah, that's basically has been the impact it has had in my life. I've never actually played any of the tournaments, but I've it's definitely its own little world. I remember I was taken to a couple of places where they had arcade setups to look like an arcade in a garage, and it was just Street Fighter all the time. And people there were really serious. Just to give you an idea of some of my diversity is that in Street Fighter 2, Chun-Li and Ryu and Ken were my three mains. Street Fighter 3, I actually skipped that one. I didn't really like the counter and the parry system. It was all more of a timing thing, and I didn't really develop that timing, although apparently Chun-Li is top tier in Street Fighter 3. Street Fighter 4, the funny thing is that I actually got really good with Zangief. So that was kind of fun. And then Street Fighter 5, it's been kind of a mix, and I don't really know which one I really want to main as. They've done so many different tweaks with all the different characters that that they're really no longer the same, and that goes with all the different versions of Street Fighter. It's that nowadays it's just kind of fun to just kind of mix it up. All the different fighting games that I've been playing, like Super Smash Brothers and Mortal Kombat and all of those ones, like it's basically, it's kind of gotten repetitive. And I found that it no longer really gives me that I don't know, that adrenaline rush anymore, unless like I've met a couple of friends that are actually old hard school, like old school Street Fighter fanatics, and whenever we get to play like the classic Street Fighter 2 together, we could go on for hours just playing the same two characters over and over and over again, and we would be able to do that, and that's fine. But other than that, I just haven't had like I guess like that competitive spark that I did with Street Fighter 2. So yeah, so that's kind of my history with the game. I figured that I just give like some quick blurbs about random topics, and this one goes to Nick. So if you have any other suggestions about like other things that you'd like me to talk about, or if you'd like me to go and talk about in more detail, that'd be great. I just kind of figured that if anything, this would help me with my my social needs, basically able to chit chat and talk and give you like glimpses into my life, and at the same time, yeah, it gives you an opportunity to hear my voice. Apparently, a lot of people miss me chatting and talking about random things, so there you go. Again, feel free to leave me any comments and let me know what else you would like to hear about. I promise that I'll come up with better topics and maybe give you like a more of a slideshow or something along those lines. All right, we'll see what happens. Talk to you soon.